Beautiful people of the internet. Lovely, lovely people of the internet. We need to talk about Matt Taibbi again, because my guy is being smeared. And I love Matt Taibbi, friend of the show, Matt Taibbi, because he's such a thoughtful, unbiased journalist and has been for a long time, and was always on the side of the left and the Democrats historically, when they weren't the centers of power and they were, I guess, professing to help regular people. And so what's going on now is with the Democrats are the center of power, and anyone who reports critically on that center of power is, of course, a right-winger, or, whatever you need to attack them personally. They're not part of your team. And that's kind of what journalism has degenerated into, thanks largely to Fox News and Rupert Murdoch. If you want to pinpoint the source of all this, the, partisanification, that's a big word to say. I think I just made it up. Partisanification of journalism. You can trace the roots of it to Fox News. They created that hyper-partisan model in the build-up to the Iraq War. They were the ones calling everyone a Saddam, a terrorist. You're either with us or you're with the terrorists. And over the last 20 years, that role has just flipped. All of those neocons like Bill Kristol and Nicole Wallace and Victoria Nuland, look all these people up. The Kagans, they all moved into the Democratic Party, and now the Democrats are the McCarthyite, warmongering, censorship people, and they're using a lot of the tactics that the Republicans used during the Iraq War, which always, piques my radar when I see it. So today we're going to talk about Mehdi Hasan, because to his credit, I will give him credit, Mehdi Hasan had Matt Taibbi on his show. Now, you don't see many dissenting journalists on MSNBC, so I will start by just, giving Mehdi Hasan ultimately credit for putting Matt Taibbi on MSNBC, because the reason that he hasn't been on there before is no one's invited him. That's the reason he's going on Fox News and Tucker Carlson, is because those are the mainstream sources that will talk to him about this stuff. And the guy used to write for Rolling Stone. The idea that he's some right-winger is just ridiculous. He wrote a book called Insane Clown President about Trump. Okay? The idea that he's this right-wing figure is just, it's proof of how desperate these people are to smear him. It's proof of I think, honestly, it's proof of the profoundness of what he's onto here. So I don't want to hopefully watch this whole thing, but let's watch some pieces of this Mehdi Hasan interview, because he just had Matt on MSNBC. And yeah, let's watch a bit of it first.
Investment bank is a great vampire squid wrapped around the face of humanity, relentlessly jamming its blood funnel into anything that smells like money. That was how, in 2009, Rolling Stone journalist Matt Taibbi famously began The Great American Bubble Machine, his 10,000-word expose on Goldman Sachs and its considerable economic influence at the height of the Great Recession. The vampire squid was an indelible image, and it was textbook Matt Taibbi. If you were like me back then, you loved reading his blistering takedowns of America.
So right out of the gate, he's framing this in a manner that makes it seem like he's kind of defending Goldman Sachs to some degree. He's pointing out Matt Taibbi's history as someone who was critical of power, which is kind of an odd way to start, but let's keep going.
America's worst villains in 15 years at Rolling Stone and in occasional NBC and MSNBC appearances. Taibbi won lots of fans and awards for skewering anyone who shafted the little guy from K Street to Wall Street. But if you listen to him these days, he's telling a different story.
I spent 10 years covering the aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis. That was obviously a very serious issue, but This Twitter file story and what we're looking at now and what we're investigating now, I don't think there's any comparison. This is by far the most serious thing that I've ever looked at, and it's certainly the most grave story that I've ever worked on personally.
Yes, the Twitter files, quote unquote, 19 releases of select internal Twitter documents provided to Taibbi and other reporters and activists after the social media site was...
So, okay, right off the bat, one of the tactics that these people have used to kind of try and discredit this guy is, oh, it's just Twitter. I mean, come on, it's Twitter, really? You gonna care about Twitter? Well, remember the last couple years? Do you remember what happened? Do you remember how we were locked in our houses and not allowed to talk to each other and social distanced? And social media was the public square at that point in time, really. That was where we were talking to each other. So this idea that they're trying to just kind of dismiss this as like, oh, it's Twitter, really? Come on, guys, let's be serious. Twitter. Yeah, Twitter. That's how people communicate now. This isn't 1982.
It was acquired by tech billionaire Elon Musk, remember him? Which made seemingly explosive claims about the politicized blocking of the Hunter Biden story, as well as allegations that Twitter shadow banned conservative accounts without cause.
Okay, the Hunter Biden story right there. That's the reason I did not vote for Joe Biden. That reason alone. Because I knew when they censored that story and all these intelligence agents came out that it was bullshit. And they did it for political reasons. And I was proven right about that. It was my guts telling me like, hey, yeah, this is bullshit and I know it. And I was proven right. So, I'm not trying to get any credit for that. But again, imagine if these roles were reversed and Donald Trump Jr. had been on a coke binge and was like selling access to the government to, China or whatever. These same people would be losing their minds and all about prosecuting it because of their partisan allegiances. They are prone to try and dismiss this as some made up thing. And to be honest, during the Obama years, the Republicans did a lot of drama queening with Benghazi and stuff, but that's a whole other ball of wax. And let's listen more to this guy.
According to Musk and Taibbi and his reporting colleagues and the Republican House majority, those files show Twitter colluding behind the scenes with feds, NGOs, and yes, Democrats to silence critics. A new woke McCarthyism through digital censorship.
Democrats used to care about protecting First Amendment free speech rights, too. Now it's like, okay, if you're attacking... And I said this on the House floor. I said, don't think they won't come for you. Oh,
remember that line, woke McCarthyism, because...
Cancel culture. They may come for Republicans and conservatives now, but the mob is never satisfied. They will keep coming.
But critics say the Twitter files don't come close to making that case, and that they also are a product of questionable journalistic ethics gifted to Taibbi and others by a billionaire with access and a right-wing political agenda, and then rapidly weaponized by conservative media with little regard for the facts.
The Republicans have brought in two of Elon Musk's public scribes to release cherry-picked, out-of-context emails and screenshots designed to promote his chosen narrative, Elon Musk's chosen narrative, that is now being parroted by the Republicans because
Okay, so let's address this one because this one comes up a lot. This is another tactic that they like to use. Do you know who owns the Washington Post? Yeah, Jeff Bezos. Do these same people, when they have Washington Post reporters on their show talking about how Trump's a Russian spy, go, what about Jeff Bezos? I think Jeff Bezos owning the Washington Post has really tainted your views on this. No. So that's bullshit right off the bat because they don't hold other reporters to this standard. This is clearly a partisan thing. And it's really odd to me how quickly Matt Taibbi calls it the Hitler of the Month Club, but how quickly Elon Musk was thrown into this club. The guy who makes the cars they all drive, the guy who made the eco-friendly Tesla cars, he made, electric cars sexy. Suddenly he's this villain because he did something that doesn't, appeal to their partisan cult. It's very odd. That's not
Republicans think that these witnesses will tell a story that's going to help them out politically.
Is the Twitter files story as big, as damning, as revealing as its proponents claim? That's what we are going to debate today. Because in some ways, Matt Taibbi has become the man of the moment, with nearly 2 million Twitter followers, tens of thousands of paid subscribers to his Substack blog, and Republican lawmakers hanging on his every word. The man who used to gleefully...
Can you hear the jealousy in this guy's voice when he says all that? It's so like these mainstream partisan hack jobs, these guys that are caught in these terrible contracts with these terrible corporations, they're so jealous of a guy like Matt Taibbi. And Matt Taibbi didn't choose this path either. You know what happened, right? He got fired from Rolling Stone for refusing to report what they wanted him to about the Russiagate stuff. He was critical of the Russiagate scam way before anyone else, and they fired him from Rolling Stone. Same thing happened to Glenn Greenwald. Glenn Greenwald founded The Intercept, and they fired him for reporting critically. His own company fired him because he reported critically on Biden, and that's how broken people's brains are around Trump. When I think about the Russiagate thing, I think about the birther stuff under Obama, right? It's like, okay, Trump, you kind of deserve this a little bit with the Russiagate shit, the way you did Obama dirty with the birther shit, It's kind of like what goes around comes around in an extreme fashion, But anyway, let's keep going.
Gleefully heap abuse on the outrage industrial complex on Fox now appears regularly on that very propaganda network he once so wonderfully lampooned. Oh, and that...
So what's interesting about this stuff too is that how quickly these people, they don't realize the reality that they're exposing themselves. Right now the power position is with the Democrats. So of course the Democrats are the ones that deserve the heavy criticism, right? They're the power center right now. So if you're a journalist, you're going to be critical of power, right?
That video you saw earlier of Taibbi testifying in last month's Republican-led hearing on the weaponization of the federal government, he says that on that day, the IRS visited his New Jersey home to tell him 2 years of tax returns had been rejected. We reached out to the IRS, but they say they can't comment on individual cases. So, late last...
Why even include that? I mean, I guess it helps Taibbi's case that he's doing something that's, upsetting someone in a powerful place.
Month, Matt Taibbi asked me on Twitter, where else, to invite him on the show to debate the Twitter files and free speech and Elon Musk. Now, I've mocked him in the past for doing PR work for the world's richest man, and he's accused me of being an ardent establishment moralist. Great line. But today...
Doing PR for the world's richest man. Who owns MSNBC? Ask yourself that. That's the lamest attempt at a smear to discredit a story, that he's doing PR for... Okay, anyone that works at the Washington Post then is doing PR for Amazon. How do you like that? Are you going to hold Washington Post to this standard as well? Are you going to hold the same standards across? Of course not, because you're not a journalist. You're a paid partisan hack.
Why do you believe these Twitter files are so important, and what should our viewers know about what's in them that they don't know? Just briefly, your top lines.
First of all, I never said anything about woke McCarthyism, so do you want to take that back?
I didn't put that in quotes. I said a so-called woke McCarthyism. Jim Jordan has also talked about that, and that was a line into Jim Jordan. But happy to say that you haven't described it as McCarthyism. You've described it, I think, as a digital censorship complex. Industrial.
Yeah, because what they're trying to do is frame this as a left versus right thing, when the reality is it's a dissent thing. It's not left and right. He's trying to make it like the right wing is upset that Twitter is only censoring woke people. No, there's plenty of people on the left that are being censored as well. I believe some of the stuff that just came out about Clarence Thomas and the stuff that's going on with him, I don't know if you've seen all this, but he's basically taking legalized bribes from rich conservative donors. But, at the same time, Clarence Thomas has said publicly he thinks social media sites should be utilities. He's more in line with the way I think on this than MSNBC is. So anyway,
they're doing what you're arguing. They're making the argument that, oh, we're not actually asking, this isn't censoring, this is just the government pointing out that
That's
this or
what the
that.
emails show that you posted. They don't demand anything, do they? They say, can you check if this is in line with your terms of service? And those URLs weren't. So I'm wondering why you wouldn't mention that.
First of all, the government, I can't even report that yet.
so all the way, this guy's just like defending power structures. And I don't know, I always like to throw out this quote, and I think it's William Randolph Hearst is who it was traced to. But the quote is, "News is something someone doesn't want published. Everything else is just advertising." And that just nails it so well. If you're not reporting things that are inconvenient to powerful people, or, questioning narratives, asking questions. I mean, it's just like science. It's about asking questions. And if you're sitting here like he's doing, I mean, he's asking questions to some degree, but he's defending. Mehdi Hasan has no intellectual curiosity or no journalistic curiosity. He's not asking Matt Taibbi like, hey, can you point out, examples where you may have found the left being censored or people, because I'm sure there are examples. I just read an article about an FBI infiltrator in Denver trying to entrap people into a plot to assassinate the AG or something like that, so there is that stuff happening, but this guy doesn't ask about any of that. He's here to be a propagandist for the Democratic Party, which is the business that MSNBC's in. So
that yet. All right. When they're doing this, it's self-evident what they're doing, and I don't have to make claims about what it is. I can just show you what they're doing. Everybody knows.
But you didn't, Matt. That's the problem. You didn't show the world that the Biden campaign asked for nude images. You didn't.
So this is the other thing that they're doing with this too that I love is they're pretending to be outraged and act like this is an invasion of privacy or it's dirty picture. It's just naked pictures of Hunter Biden, ignoring the fact that the salacious aspects of it like that no one really cares about. What they care about is the reality that Hunter Biden sat on a board in the Ukraine, on an energy board at a no-show job and got a bunch of money. And so there's all kinds of information in the laptop, and the FBI had it before, the Post reported on it. So they knew it was not a Russian propaganda story from the get-go. But it's just interesting the way that they try to frame this too, is like, oh, it was a terms of service violation. I've had this argument with people with like, it's a private company. Well, yeah, you're not arguing that when it's a private baker trying to refuse gay people's wedding cakes, like then it's not a private company. Suddenly they need to be publicly minded. So it's these arguments only get made when it's convenient to make them, and those are the kind of people that I have a problem with, that I'll call out, because if you have principles, it's tough to stick to principles in a situation like this with someone like Taibbi. The easy road for him would be to go, oh, Trump's terrible and everything that's bad in the world is Trump's fault. That's like guys like Rachel Maddow and Mehdi Hasan do, because they get paid very well to do that. And instead, people like Matt and Glenn Greenwald have taken this real journalism route of, questioning power and being critical of power structures, which is what it's really about. But that.
Pointed out what those URLs were. You never did. And that's the problem, Matt. There's a lot of omission.
Thousands of things that I wrote. Am I going to describe every single thing that I published?
That was the first Twitter file and the most viral tweet. Noam Chomsky, who you know and I know,
By the way,
like,
which is about a subject you guys screwed up.
but you didn't outline which ones.
That's the other thing. He does get Matt pretty riled up here. And, you know, I'm sure that was the intention. But Matt kind of gets a little emotional about it when he knew that this is what he was walking into. He's walking into someone who their whole aim is to make him look like he's, you know, not credible, you know, as if MSNBC, the Russiagate network. How many times did Rachel Maddow have to, you know, remember when the whole thing with Trump's tax returns and Rachel Maddow kind of got like stooged on it, and she was like, this supposed to be this big scoop and all these people tuned in, and then it was just a, you know, like kind of a weak fart. But
so I wonder, how do you call this a censorship industrial complex when Twitter, according to your own files, is saying no a lot of the time? I mean, if it was censorship, they'd have just rolled over every time Agent Chan of the FBI or Congressman Adam Schiff made a demand, but they didn't.
Okay, so this is another thing that a claim that they're trying to make that's ridiculous. If you follow this at all and you read this, and this is what's so sad about people like Mehdi Hasan, is that people can read this information, Mehdi. We can go dig through the Twitter files, and it's very obvious that at the beginning they kind of did push back. Like people like Yoel Roth and these people kind of did go like, hey, I don't know if this is okay for us to censor. And then it evolved. The situation evolved to a point where suddenly there's Jim Baker from the FBI working at Twitter, you know, and say whatever you want about it. But the idea that he's trying to posit here is that, oh, see, look, here's a tweet where they were critical and you said yourself they're critical. Yeah, they were at first, but the situation evolved. And if you read the timeline and you know the details of it, like you should know, Mehdi, or your producers should know, so you don't look like an ass trying to hammer this partisan angle for your own, you know, for your political benefit instead of doing real journalism. And this is why no one trusts people like Rachel Maddow, and the number one talk show on late night is Greg Gutfeld, because all these partisan hacks have zero curiosity and zero credibility because they don't do their job. They're clowns.
I published an explicit tweet which describes Twitter's internal ads policy, where they say publicly, we are going to represent that we make these decisions at our sole discretion. Internally, we are going to act when the U.S. intelligence agency, the U.S. intelligence community, that's the quote, when the U.S. intelligence community determines that an account is linked to a foreign malign threat actor. So they're talking about their two-phase system in the document. Now, yes.
But your words, Matt, you say, to their credit, they turned down requests. You say it yourself. Those are your words in the Twitter files.
Yeah, they did, but
Yeah, he's giving them credit sometimes, but the situation evolved, Mehdi. And if you had read the timeline and read some of the actual information and the actual evidence that Matt presents, you would know that. I'm just a guy in his fucking kitchen doing YouTube videos, and I'm doing better journalism than this guy.
The Election Integrity Project in the Twitter files, which Stanford and the University of Washington founded to monitor attacks on our elections. And you say some stuff about them that a lot of your critics say is not true, and that affects your credibility. You said the EIP was founded in response to the government dropping its proposal.
So this is the big error gotcha moment that he comes at him with. Oh, you said this organization was formed 2 years earlier than it was. That's it. Okay. And he admits, Taibbi, to his credit, is like, okay, that was an error. You know, it doesn't change any of this. It doesn't change anything. And the average person, they can take that soundbite and put it into a headline and go, oh, see, like he the way he sets it up is this affects the credibility. This affects your credibility. No, it doesn't. It doesn't. It's a minor detail. You ever heard of that? No, you don't do journalism, Mehdi Hasan, so you don't know what a minor detail is. It has no effect on the overall case here.
Information government. Well, there you are. We're quoting you on screen. It wasn't. It was formed 2 years earlier. You suggest it was government funded, even though during the 2020 election that you're covering, it wasn't. You say they labeled 22 million tweets as misinformation in the run-up to the 2020 vote. They didn't. They flagged 3,000 election misinformation tweets for labeling, so you were only 21,997,000 off. And you also claim the EIP was, let me finish the question, you can come back in. You also claim the EIP was partnered with the government Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Agency, CISA, to censor Twitter, but you mix up CISA, CISA, a Homeland Security Agency, with the Center for Internet Security, the CIS, which is a non-profit. In fact, you added an A to CIS. I think people can see it there in brackets to make that false claim. It's just error after error, Matt, on just this one topic.
He points out these two little clerical errors and tries to hang the... Again, I don't know how people can see this. People with functioning brains can see this kind of propaganda and not laugh at it, and how blatantly obvious it is what this guy is doing. How can you look at this and go, "Oh yeah, that's a real news show"?
Come on, what? You got something wrong. You got CISA wrong. Why did you add A? Okay, Matt, why did you add A in square brackets? Do you understand why people worry about?
I actually thought that.
That's the debunking of Mehdi Hasan. Why did you add A in square brackets? Great job, Mehdi. You're a real friggin' champ, buddy. He added an A in square brackets. I mean, he loses all credibility, of course, because of that. I mean, how could he not? Okay, so this is actually really great. Listen to this.
You don't. So essentially, you're arguing that this information was not in the public interest, that I somehow shouldn't have done this story that I'd worked hard on, because Elon Musk tweeted something. You don't think that story?
No, I said he banned journalists. I think hold on, Matt. If you're doing a story about free speech on Twitter and the head of Twitter bans journalists, yeah, I think most people. By the way, Barry Weiss, your partner in crime on that, your colleague, your reporter. Sorry for that euphemism. Your reporting colleague. She actually did call him out. So it's weird that Barry.
I love how he kind of gave away the game of the euphemism with the euphemism thing. Sorry for that euphemism. Partner in crime. Just everything they're doing language-wise and image-wise to frame this as, these are bad people doing bad things for Elon Musk. And again, you're going to hold Matt Taibbi and Barry Weiss to Elon Musk, then you need to hold every reporter from the Washington Post to Jeff Bezos, or any other news network for that. Who's the CEO of CNN now? They've been through a bunch of different ones, or the owner. I think BlackRock owns MSNBC, so there you go.
Barry Weiss had more integrity on that, some might argue, your critics might say, than you did. Look, we're running out of time. You don't want to talk about India, that's fine. You can go away and research it, but you volunteered to come on the show to talk about it. I got to ask you about the clip on Joe Rogan. You've seen the clip. It was mentioned at Congress. I do want to get your response to it. Can we play the clip of you telling Joe Rogan about how you should deal with sources who give you information? Let's play that clip.
With any kind of journalist, like once you start getting handed things, then you've lost. You know what I mean? They have you at that point, and you got to get out of that habit. It's like, or you can't cross that line.
So per your own words, Matt, you crossed that line and Musk has you. Those are your words.
The hilarity of this coming from MSNBC, which did nothing but vomit up fake Russiagate stories that came straight from the FBI for 6 consecutive years that you guys still haven't apologized for.
I wasn't there in that period, so I've got nothing to apologize. I'm asking you your words.
Okay. He's like, oh, I wasn't here. He didn't deny that MSNBC did that, but he's like, I wasn't here during that period, so it's not on me. So what I think is interesting about this, too, is if I had been in Taibbi's shoes, here's how I would have responded. I would have said, hey, Mehdi, did you watch the build-up to that clip? Because the build-up to that, they start with a clip of Stephen Colbert dancing with Chuck Schumer. And it's disgusting because, these guys are supposed to be critical of power. And I mean, Stephen Colbert is a talk show host, right? He's not claiming to be a journalist. So it's a little bit more acceptable, I think, in his case than it would be for someone like Mehdi Hasan. But the whole setup to that quote, the context of the conversation that he's pulling out, if I were Matt, I would have pulled back to that and said, hey, Mehdi, did you watch the build up to that? Because what we were talking about is how journalism has transformed over the past 20 years, where journalists used to not be friends with politicians, and now they're at the same dinner parties. And I'm sure you could point to, I'll go up and I'm not going to Google it now while I'm filming, but I'll grab some stuff and throw it up. I'm sure there's evidence of Mehdi Hasan, being tied to the Democratic Party somehow, or whatever. This guy is obviously a paid hack for his party. But let's listen to the rest of this.
Did you cross a line? It's a very simple question. You can what about and deflect. It's a simple question. We played a clip for you. I'm giving you a chance to answer. Did you cross the line? Your words.
No, I did not. The stories are self-contained stories that hold up in themselves. And what I was talking about in the Joe Rogan story, I was quoting a passage from Seymour Hersh's book, Reporter, when he was talking about when he was given a story by the CIA about an Israeli
which is what the
spy
FBI did with Russiagate. They gave MSNBC stories about Trump.
The guy who had always gotten the material is being handed the material. So yeah, it sounds bad, but this stuff is clearly in the public interest. It's real, it's true, and I'm doing the best I can to report it. The question is, the test you always have with your sources is whether or not this stuff is in the public interest and whether it's accurate. And apparently I've gotten like one thing wrong or a few things wrong, but mostly I think these stories are going to hold up over the test of time, unlike your Russiagate story.
So let me ask you this, Matt. And you're going to say this is a bad faith question, but let me just be clear. I'm not questioning your work ethic. You keep saying you seem to be offended. I'm sure you work very hard. I was a big fan.
You seem offended. Of course he's offended. What the hell are you talking about? You're attacking him on meritless grounds. You're lobbing, ad hominem attacks at this guy and accusing him of doing PR for the richest man in the world when he's a far better journalist. And you admit at the beginning you used to be his fan. You start by quoting some of his work, his great work that he's done in the past. But now that you don't agree with it, or that you're being paid to, try to discredit him by your masters, he's no good, because he's reporting on something that your cult doesn't like. And it's sad that media has degenerated to this point, or maybe it's not, because it creates opportunities for people like myself and Jimmy Dore and people media critics who look at this and go, "Are you kidding me? How can you do this? This is terrible." Anyway, thanks for opening a lane for me, Mehdi Hasan, you terrible journalist.
Big fan of yours for many years. I've always admired your writing, and which is why I have to ask this last question, which you're going to say in bad faith, but I promise it is. It's genuinely as a former fan. You tweeted in response to Jim Jordan. You started the interview saying, my journey. You have been on a journey for many of us. You said it was an honor. Thank you, Chairman Jim Jordan. It was an honor.
The journey has been you leaving where you were at, guys, too. That's the funny part. Matt Taibbi hasn't changed. What's changed is the Democrats. The party was taken over by neocons, and now it's a right-wing authoritarian party, apparently, that wants to force people's bodily autonomy away from them and censor their speech. And again, imagine if the roles were reversed. Imagine if this was Donald Trump's administration and they were censoring something that liberals said. Apparently the ability to empathize has been lost post-Trump, because people just can't understand why this isn't a good thing if they watch MSNBC and CNN. And I mean, I already did a piece on this, but what it really breaks down to is journalists being criticized, because that's the window that Twitter and social media opened up. Is now journalists can't just be sparing with the facts and not hear about it, because the average Joe can go and look it up on Google and make fun of them, frankly, or the average Joe who was there with video can disprove them when they write bullshit. And people like Mehdi Hasan hate that, but people like Matt Taibbi embrace it and have done a good job with it, so that's where we're at, I guess. And look at his opportunity.
A lot of people think that sounded a bit fawning to one of the most right-wing members of Congress. Later, you meet Ted Cruz,
who calls you to be invited to Congress,
who calls you a true patriot. He calls you a true patriot, and you're all looking very intense in that picture. I wonder, when you met Ted Cruz, did you tell Ted Cruz that how you wrote in 2015 that he has, quote, big doses of Tea Party energy, and in 2018 that he's like an incurable skin condition? Do you understand why, Matt, those people who have read your stuff find it amazing now, the people you are?
Ted Cruz knows what I've written about him over the years. He knows that I talked about him as, I described him as having a face like a waterlogged Reagan mask sewn together at gunpoint. He knows all that stuff. But that's the point. This is America. We don't have to agree all the time. I don't have to like them all, but these people all the time. They're on this issue. They're giving oxygen to something that I think is important, that I think a lot of people is important. And if he wants to meet me, that's fine. If Jim Jordan wants me to come talk in front of Congress, I'm happy to do it. I'm happy to answer questions.
Okay, and that's where I'm gonna close out, because that lays it bare right there. This is a partisan thing. Mehdi Hasan made it very clear right there. Hey, how dare you go talk to the other team? And what's funny about the Ted Cruz, the insulting things that Taibbi said, is, remember Trump? Didn't Trump say bad things about Ted Cruz's wife and stuff? And now they're on the same side, because all's fair in love and war, I guess. I mean, and in politics, it's like sometimes you disagree and you battle people, and sometimes you work together on stuff, and that's just how it is. But again, this guy's revealing what I think is so funny. He's revealing his biases as a journalist. Like, how dare you go meet with Ted Cruz? When remember when Bipartisan was like oh yay, Bipartisan? You know, there's certain people that they'll cheer if they go on Fox News. If you see Pete Buttigieg or you know, Bernie or someone, actually Bernie was demonized for it back in the day, for going on, God forbid you go and talk to half the country, you know, that might disagree with you on abortion or something. You terrible person. and this is just, it's MSNBC clown world over there. Like they've become a shallow parody of Fox. You know, Murdoch kind of set the standard, and then the rest of these networks are like trying to play keep up. You know, instead of what I liked about MSNBC when I used to watch it, when it was Keith Olbermann and Rachel Maddow back in their primes before they let it go to their head, you know, they were honest journalists and they were speaking truth to power. Now they're not. Tucker Carlson is, because the Democrats run everything. And I keep going back to that quote because it's so great. You know, news is something someone doesn't want printed. Everything else is advertising. And you know, go look up. I go off about this all the time. The Smith Modernization Act, the Trusted News Initiative they passed with COVID. People don't know about these things. They literally passed a law that gives corporate media the ability to say, hey, that's not real, that's fake news. You know, the Reuters and the APs of the world. And there's a whole swath of shit around that. But, I mean, that's where we're going. And I think the whole point of me bringing this up is people like Matt Taibbi are the pushback against that. And we need them, regardless of what you think of their partisan allegiances or, you know, who they met with in Congress. You know, it's a serious issue. And that's one of the things you can give Matt Taibbi credit for. Look at his record. He's been the kind of guy who reports on serious things like the financial crisis, Occupy Wall Street, Eric Garner's murder. He wrote a book called Insane Clown President. He's not some Trumper, you know, and that's what they're trying to frame this all as. So anyway, if you want to watch the whole thing, you can, but you don't, because I just summarized it for you and I pointed to all the BS you needed to see. So hopefully I don't get a copyright strike for using MSNBC's content, but this needs to be discussed because it's disgusting. Take care of yourselves.